Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, first part for the 7th of June 2025. Sorry, it's a little bit late, later than I normally would bring this video out, weekend and all that. Okay, the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before are pretty interesting. Some high numbers here, including with the Russian cruise missiles and UAVs. Obviously, we'd expect that given the huge attack the night before last in Kiev, Lutsk, and Ternopil, etc., etc. Last night there was a huge attack on Kharkiv. In fact, possibly the single biggest attack on a city, maybe since the beginning of the war. Certainly on Kharkiv itself. Really significant attack, possibly a sort of continuation of the retaliation, if you like, for what the Ukrainians did in defending themselves against the Russians. Okay, 1,120 personnel lost is where we've seen it, give or take, over the last few weeks. 15 tanks is now, that's above average, and that is a significant number to have lost in a single day. So that means there's been quite a bit of activity or some destruction of quite a lot of equipment. 52 troop-carrying AFVs. That is massive. That's well over double the daily average when we have seen that right down at sort of 5, 7, 3, that kind of area for the last week or so. To suddenly shoot up to 52, it does make you wonder what happened yesterday. 56 artillery systems, that's well above, well, over 2 times the daily average there as well. 4 multiple launch rocket systems, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and a helicopter. Helicopter has sneaked in there. Wonder what that was. Indeed, could have been a strike inside Bryansk that we saw a couple of nights ago. That now people are claiming, well, the Russian media are claiming, took out 2 helicopters. We were wondering whether, well, it's being reported as an Iskander launch system, possibly. That was taken out there, but it could well be that this number comes from Bryansk. Then, of course, the 300 drones and 37 cruise missiles. Remember, the cutoff is sort of halfway through the night before to halfway through last night. 166 vehicles and fuel tanks is a huge number in that category. And that will suggest there's a lot of activity going on along the front lines. Sumy is incredibly active. But then, of course, we've got pretty much everywhere being active. 1 piece of special equipment. So really significant numbers. Now, I wonder whether there could be something like this feeding into those numbers. But I have not seen any other reports of this. So I have no knowledge of whether this is at all true or not. This has only come out this morning from Sarin. That's what that number means, Sarin. The Defense Forces of Southern Ukraine hit a locomotive with a column of enemy equipment. The enemy's losses amounted to 13 tanks and more than 100 units of armoured and automotive equipment. Now, if that's true, then suddenly you've got some justification. 13 tanks and 100 pieces of armoured equipment. That starts looking like what was on that train. But that's the only source I have for that. So no other claim concerning that. So pinch of salt and all that. But the Ukrainian general staff figures throwing out 52 troop-carrying AFVs in one single day when previously we'd been way less than the daily average suggests that could be something that's happened. But those are some pretty impressive numbers. Then the big news this morning, really good for Ukraine. As Kiev says, topping off a very bad week for Russian aviation. One of Russia's Su-35s that regularly launches guided glide bombs onto the people of Ukraine has been destroyed over Russia's Kursk region. Okay, couple of things to note here. First of all, how do we have what one would presume Ukrainian imagery of this? So it appears to be Ukrainian spotter drone imagery of a Russian Air Force jet going down over Kursk. Now, this will, you would assume, B, it says a Kursk direction. So here we have Russian forces now visually confirmed to have lost the Su-35 fighter jet in Kursk today, potentially shot down by an F-16 or Patriot system. So one, Ukrainians have drones over Kursk spotting this. I mean, I presume that's Ukrainian. Two, what has taken this down? This is a plane that would be, I would have thought, releasing guided glide bombs. And there are claims that those guided glide bombs can now be released 95 kilometers from the target. But even if you're talking sort of 70 kilometers, one would assume that this would be well inside Kursk. So what has shot it down? And a claim from Ukrainian battle map, no provenance for these theories, but it could be an F-16 or it could be a Patriot. Patriot would easily have that distance. F-16, you'd have to get fairly close and you'd be vulnerable yourself to actually the Russian missiles that arguably have a greater range, air-to-air missiles. So what shot that down? Don't know. It's the 8th confirmed destruction of a Su-35 by Ukraine in the war. But that's definitely happened. Now, fighter bomber, who is the Russian aviation source that is often very reliable, has admitted this has happened. I mean, you can't really deny it, but said that the pilot survived. So it looks like the pilot ejected and was rescued. But that's a really good outcome for the Ukrainians there. Now, the Ukrainian Air Force themselves is absolutely hammering Russian forces, according to OSINT Technical here in the town of Tetkino. I reported on Tetkino, did a bit of an analysis on that in my last frontline update that was yesterday. I said in the video it's a 16-day update. It's actually a 9-day update. I got that wrong. Now surrounded by Ukrainian troops on 3 sides, the Russians in Tetkino. Seen here, Ukrainian F-16s, MiG-29s and Su-27s drop a mix of US and French supplied precision guided bombs on Russian positions there. So giving the Russians a really hard time. Now here we have the Phoenix unit of Ukraine's border brigade Pomsta striking deep into Russian rear positions. Among the destroyed assets is a TOS-1A. So those are the thermobaric, some people call them flamethrowers. It's not really accurate. 2 tanks, an armoured vehicle, artillery, a Shitel electronic warfare system. Those are pretty high value electronic warfare systems, and a drone command post. So yeah, of course, well done. So lots of videos still coming out showing a variety of things getting blown up. Fairly typical, but you've got a decent range of stuff getting taken out there. Claim is that this is fairly deep into the Russian rear. And again, all of that adding to the numbers that we are seeing today and regularly. Here, what we have in Belgorod, so this is inside Russia, in Valyuki, a drone hitting an electrical substation. In addition, a video appeared in which a drone attacked a cell phone tower there too. So we had a substation, that's not this one. And I'm wondering whether the substation was that drone, that the kind of Luti looking drone that drove straight into, I don't know, a pylon. I don't know if that's what they're talking about. But anyway, here we have a cell phone tower, mobile phone tower being hit by a drone. That is interesting. You could argue they're going for civilian infrastructure there, but actually lots of military equipment use cell phone or mobile phone coverage to do their things. And then they also put military equipment at the top of these because obviously they're very tall. And so there might well be electronic warfare equipment up there or surveillance comms equipment too. Okay, BBC had an article out that seemed to be counter to what we were understanding the situation is. So a year ago, said Serhiy Varikin, who's a commander of the Unmanned Systems Battalion of the 58th Separate Motorised Infantry Brigade, he said a year ago we could afford to launch 100 first-person view drones per day. Now there are nowhere near that. So this is Ukrainian saying this. Last year we could easily afford to destroy 11 to 17 pieces of equipment per day. We could afford to use, if there were active hostilities, 100 FPV drones per day. What do we have now? Now our brigade can receive only 200 to 300 drones per month. So that's 10 a day. So that is, 10 times less, 10 times fewer drones or more than they were previously using. That's what they get on a monthly basis, 200 to 300. Now, So as someone says, that sounds weird. All reports are Ukraine has a much bigger drone production now compared to a year ago. Either these reports are wrong or the commander of the brigade ain't telling the truth. Now, I wonder whether it can be both. So what could explain a commander feeling like they have far fewer drones than they used to? And I'm guessing that it's actually the amount of drone units being used across the front line. So they are now trying to substitute soldiers with drone operators and drones, so that they have this drone corridor, the drone line, and they don't have infantrymen manning trenches at the numbers that they previously did, but they have drones doing that work instead. The problem there is if you're, I don't know, for example, quadrupling your drone operators across the front line, or maybe more, who knows, I'm just pulling numbers out my backside, then you are going to be, even if you are producing more drones, you are spreading them over many more people and also a larger front line as well. So, you know, there are maybe some confounding variables in there that could confuse matters, and it could be that certain units are getting prioritized as well. So you hear about the Brave One situation where, you know, points win prizes, the better units, it seems to be like a snowball effect. It could be that the better units get prioritized because they do better, and so you want to reward merit, but that means that units that don't do so well therefore get pushed to the back of the queue. And it could be that this guy is in a unit that doesn't do quite as well as some of these more prominent units, and therefore they're not having as much success in procuring drones, and so on and so forth. So there could be lots of reasons for this scenario whereby, you know, both elements are true, that there are more drones being produced by the Ukrainians, but there are units that are getting fewer drones. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I guess Ukraine is prioritizing distributing drones to more effective units. So this is someone saying exactly what I just said there. It may simply be a communication issue or good old corruption. Yes, it does exist within some of the senior ranks still. That some of these disappear or are misdirected, or it may be that the 58th isn't tactically prioritized, as you suggest, or even break down the transport, trucks and all roads. So it could just be in that area that unit has been had its logistics hammered or something. I don't know. There could be many reasons for this, but I think you can be pretty confident the Ukrainians are producing more drones and procuring more drones now than they were last year. They know that is their main priority, pretty much. Now, Andrew Perpetua on the drone front says Ukrainian drone interceptors. So these are the drones that are used to intercept other drones, like the Lancet kamikaze drone, those medium range reconnaissance drones. And I don't think it's ones that would take out Shahids necessarily, although they are working on that. They do have interceptor drones for them, but that's not what's being talked about here. Ukrainian drone interceptors have blown past their usual limits. What used to be routine hits over friendly territory, the grey zone, maybe a few clicks into Russian ground, now feels quaint, because lately we're seeing interceptions 12 to 13, even 18 kilometers in. In other words, what he's saying is you would normally have evidence of Ukrainians intercepting Russian, say, kamikaze or reconnaissance drones when they're over Ukrainian territory. Right, you're spotting these Russian drones, bloody annoying. You get your drones up, you intercept them, but they've already done reconnaissance over, say, 50 kilometers of your land. Then you're seeing, okay, interceptions take place close to the contact line, then over the grey zone. So actually you're hitting them earlier and earlier. Now he's saying, actually, the Ukrainians are now hitting the Russian, they're intercepting the Russian reconnaissance drones. So these are high up, and these are at quite a distance. So rather than, I guess, sending up these interceptor drones that might not have much range, you're kind of looking at sort of cone there of the sky, and as they come over, you send up an interceptor to go and shoot them down. You're now sending these interceptors into Russian territory to take out the Russian kamikaze and reconnaissance drones before they even get to the contact line. So that shows an increased, it could show several things here, or all things at once. An increased range of the interceptor drones, which is super important, so that you can hit them earlier. But it could be that the targets are all being taken out more successfully above your own sky, so you're moving back and back and back. And this could show a clearing out of the Russian reconnaissance capability over Ukrainian skies in certain areas. I don't know. I mean, that would be the most hopeful interpretation of that data. He said, but this one slipped over 32 kilometers into Russia, deep, smooth, uninvited. You don't just see range like that, you feel it. Geos are done by Artem, so geolocations, who rage quit Twitter, so I am posting for him. Just absolutely incredible. So this is an interceptor drone, and this looks like that's Kursk Oblast. So you've got here Tetkino. This is the area in Sumy where the Russians are attacking. And then 32 kilometers behind the contact line, you have a Russian drone being intercepted by a Ukrainian interceptor drone. So that is incredible. That is a good sign for the Ukrainians. Really is. That's super important. That now Ukrainian drones from the Shadow unit struck a Russian Buk surface-to-air missile system on the Eastern Front. Now this is happening really frequently, as in Buks are being taken out really frequently. These are the kind of mainstay of the Russian medium-range surface-to-air missile system coverage, right? Sukhomimos did a video yesterday on Tetkino about how Tetkino is being hit by, and in fact, funnily enough, I've just shown you video, or have I? I've just shown you videos of Tetkino being hit by guided glide bombs. There you go. So this is Tetkino. So Sukhomimos actually did a video yesterday saying that that it's been seen as an example of close air support and combined arms activity going on there, where Ukrainian planes are hammering Tetkino, and then you're getting maybe a little bit of mechanized equipment, but infantry going and doing their stuff. These are all combined. This is like your classic kind of warfare that you want, your maneuver warfare or whatever, where you are combining all these different elements of your fighting forces to work effectively together, rather than just be like infantry against infantry or whatever. So what that has shown, and what Russians have complained about, is a lack of air defense from the Russians, and a lack of their own artillery coverage, and a lack of their own close air support, right? So the Ukrainians inside Russia have an air advantage. What's going on there? Well, the claim is that, and Sukhomimos said this, is that the numbers of Buks that, and I keep telling you, air defense systems are getting destroyed. You look at these figures, and the ones I am showing you inevitably are Buk M1, 2, 3s that are getting taken out. And they seem to be, and I presume there is systematicity to this. So they're systematically, I assume, taking out air defense systems, as they have been since kind of we saw it really ramp up in May 2023, when they're starting their counter-offensive, and then realised that they had all these issues, all these obstacles. But air defence systems have been degraded consistently over time until we get to June 2025, where Ukraine are using their air aviation much closer to the front line, because we've got to a point potentially where the Russian air defences are now not good enough to cover the front line. And indeed, we've got a Russian jet going down inside Kursk. So there are some interesting shifts going on here. And Sukhomimos talking, you should go and check out his video there, does talk quite a bit about, the numbers of Buks being taken out being fairly noteworthy. A gas platform used by Russian troops for military purposes and was on fire in the Black Sea yesterday. I almost reported this because there was firms data that came out. I thought, it's not really very important. But actually, people were talking about this later. In the Black Sea, so there are these different gas rigs out there that essentially are now being used for air defense or electronic warfare reasons. So this one was on fire yesterday near temporarily occupied Crimea. Battle at sea was reported that night, so that's 2 nights ago. So could have been that Ukrainian drones were active, sea drones, USVs and drones active there. So as I mentioned earlier, potentially a locomotive taken out with a column of enemy equipment, 13 tanks, more than 100 units of armoured and automotive equipment were claimed here. Now, talking about that helicopter that was on the Ukrainian General Staff list, Russian media report that the Mi-8 helicopter was destroyed and a Mi-35 helicopter damaged. So it could be the Mi-8 that's on that list by the attack on Bryansk airfield. So that was that big explosion that I showed you. Reportedly, the Mi-8 helicopter burned down completely. Its combat kit detonated. There's been no official confirmation, but reports indicate that yesterday, as a result of a powerful detonation of munitions caused by a Ukrainian kamikaze drone strike on a military airfield in Bryansk, a Russian Mi-8 AMTSH transport attack helicopter was destroyed, along with an Iskander missile system. Additionally, a Mi-35 attack helicopter was heavily damaged. But again, knowing about this, getting confirmation about this is going to be challenging. Although I think, was there a satellite image that did come out of this? Someone was saying, but I looked at it and couldn't work out anything on there. But anyway, the explosion looked much larger to me, says OSINT Intuit, and had the signatures of solid rocket fuel exploding. I believe they had an Iskander complex stored in a hangar there that they rolled out last night. So, although Russian sources themselves are claiming these helicopters, by the way, so it's not like this is not just coming from the Ukrainians. The Russians have claimed that they've admitted that 2 helicopters were destroyed or damaged. But as someone here says, yeah, I'm thinking there's more to it than that, because that was some serious explosion going on there. I don't think that's what you'd get from just a helicopter, to be honest. But, what do I know? Right. Now, the Russians here, I've extolled the virtues of decentralizing power systems so that things like wind power and solar power, I think, are really good options for the Ukrainians going forward to keep localized power generation going. But the problem is that theory doesn't work when it's close to the front lines, because, any power generation, anything close to the front lines is going to be, an easy target for the Russians and their drones. Well, here we see that the Russians are now attacking Ochakiv wind farm. So that is just over the water from the Kimburn Peninsula, the Kimburn Spit, actually. Ochakiv is a small sort of port on the Bug River estuary. So you've got the Dnipro River, and then you've got the Bug River, and they come and join that bigger estuary, and then you've got the Kimburn Peninsula. This is where the Marines area where the sort of Marines are trained, Ochakiv. Now, just back from there, if I'm correct in getting my geography right, there appears to be a wind farm that is going to be within easy range of drones. So that's going to be a real annoyance for the Ukrainians. Now, I showed you this on my frontline update yesterday. Massive bridge explosion there. That's not the original bridge. The original bridge has already been blown up, as you can see to the right of that. This is in the Kupiansk area, where the kind of replacement bridge that looks more like a just mud and dirt piled up across the river, but still incredibly important for getting transport across the river there. You got the Oskil River coming down. That has been blown up by the Russians. We've got some hashtag Russia on fire here. A jungle park amusement park in Anapa burns down. Yet another big old fire in Russia there, causing problems for the Russians. Doesn't look like any part of their economy is having happy times at the moment. And just sort of throw this one in. So talk about sabotage recently has led, in this case, Raging 545, to observe that actually there's quite a few railways have been sabotaged or attacked in different ways. It's being reported that since the beginning of June, 5 railway lines in Russia close to the Ukrainian border have been sabotaged. These include the lines from Bryansk, 2 of them, Oryol, Kursk and Voronezh. And yeah, that I wonder whether there is yet again a systematic approach to this, such that the Ukrainians are trying to present obstacles for the Russians to supply their troops in that northern area particularly. You can imagine the area around Sumy is of great concern for the Ukrainians, and so hitting the railway lines there, sabotaging them, is going to be super important. Okay, moving on to distant strikes. It is another chunky video today because there's so much happening. 206 Russian drones were sent last night. That's a big number again. 87 shot down, 80 suppressed by electronic warfare, 167 out of 206. So that is about what do we work out there? That is sort of 40 out of, that's about a fifth. 20% of them got through, which isn't brilliant compared to previously, as in when they were getting 0 to 5% getting through, but better than the third. Now, I think most of these getting through will be Kharkiv. So Kharkiv was absolutely hammered last night. And Kharkiv is pretty close to the border, and so it's quite difficult to shoot down the drones. You don't have that long, like I was saying about Kramatorsk, Sloviansk kind of area. That's very close to the contact line, which means that you only have a few minutes to acquire the target and shoot it down. And all of your air defenses need to be necessarily very close to the front line, which makes them vulnerable, which means they often get hit themselves. So you don't really want them that close, which means towns and cities close to the front line or close to the border are going to be far more vulnerable, and you will have a greater success rate of drones getting through. Now here, interestingly, the Ukrainians had quite a lot of success in taking out the missiles. 1 out of 1, or at least a cruise missile, 7 cruise missiles sent, is kind of K, and 6 KH-59-69 missiles. They were all taken out, but 2 is kind of M ballistic missiles were not taken out. 2 out of 2 there, so the 100% success rate for the Russians, at least in them not being shot down, doesn't mean that they necessarily hit their targets. But yeah, that's a lot of drones, 40 odd drones. Now there are, as I say, Kharkiv was the big one that was hit last night. So we'll talk about that in a second. A video's just come out from from a Ukrainian unit, the 11th Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade, published a new video about the RST-SLM air defense system. The soldier shown stated that he intercepted 8 Russian cruise missiles consisting of KH-101 and Caliber cruise missiles in 30 seconds with a 100% accuracy with RST-SLM. We heard about this the other night. I reported it. Why I wanted to just show you this is that this is an RST system, and none of the images notched up on the side are of drones. In other words, it looks like they are using these systems only for missiles to maybe conserve the missiles and make sure they're not utilized on lower value Shahed drones, where there's that kind of asymmetry of cost, and then relying on the lower tech systems to take down the drones, or wait till the drones do get much closer to the cities and then take them out with a missile system if needs be. But this missile system appears to be used only for those cruise missiles. So this can be, it's interesting to note that here he's standing in front of a launcher from one of the newer fire units. This can be seen not only from the low intercept count of the 34 cruise missiles, so you'd expect more if it was one of the older ones, but there's not that many on there, all things considered, but then they keep getting given these, so it could be a very recent provision for Ukraine. 34 cruise missiles, but also from the color of the launcher, so it's not even been painted or anything. It was only from the 3rd fire unit supplied by Germany that it was completely green, so the first 2 fire units were actually intended to be delivered to Egypt, which is why they have the sand pattern on them. Another interesting aspect is a full load of missiles. This is now the 2nd launcher that has attracted my attention because it's fully equipped with missiles. I noticed the first one just over a week ago. One can only hope that Ukrainians have recently gained greater access to missiles. Normally, the launchers are only ever equipped with a maximum of half the possible number of missiles. In January 2025, though, Germany pledged around 110 additional RST missiles, which were delivered in March 2025. And actually, RST missiles are often what are on the cards for the Ukrainians from Germany. Now, okay, let's go on to the actual hits from last night. Euromaidan Press says Russian terror of civilians in Ukraine continues daily. 3 people were killed last night, at least 3. There are people still under the rubble, I think. In Ukraine's 2nd largest city of Kharkiv, Russian forces deployed missiles, drones, and guided aerial bombs targeting homes, schools, and businesses. It was just pretty horrific. Kharkiv endures its, quote, most extensive attack since the full-scale invasion began. So that was 53 Shahed drones, 4 KB guided glide bombs, a missile, and that involved so far the death of 3, the injury of 21, including a 1.5-month-old baby, 14-year-old girl. 18 apartment buildings, 13 private homes were damaged, according to the mayor. I could show you lots and lots of imagery. Russia struck Kharkiv with all that stuff, so you can see, predominantly, it seems at least, civilian infrastructure was hit. Now, Tim White was going right through the night. In fact, I think he kind of had to go to sleep this morning English time because he was following it all. It was all pretty horrific. You know, he was going, right, there have been 35 explosions, right, there have been 60 explosions in the city is absolutely horrific there. So huge. You can go and check out Tim. I always advise you to follow Tim White and check out his threads. He gives you a really extensive summary of what goes on. You know, in this case in Kharkiv, I could show you. You know, he says the number of explosions in Kharkiv reaches 40, and it shows another explosion there, hitting there. More from the scene of horrendous war crimes in Kharkiv. Hashtag Stop Russia. So predominantly it's just apartment building after apartment building on fire. I mean, look at that. Kharkiv tonight. This is Russia's peace. Putin is firing, but Trump is facilitating. Stop the war criminals. And we're going to talk about, unfortunately, we have to bring in Trump in a second because he is essentially not doing. I've got a separate video I'm going to do because he's announced that the Wall Street Journal wrote that he's trying to water down the sanctions bill, the Graham sanctions bill, and then he's come out and formally denied that he's doing that, but I assume he is doing that. Meanwhile, he said on the plane that basically he was sort of justifying Russia retaliating, and it's all pretty horrible. Explosions also in Dnipropetrovsk and Ternopil as well was targeted again. So, you know, all sorts of horrible images and claims about what was taking place, particularly in Kharkiv, can be found on Tim White's thread here. It would take me too long to go through it all. Can I remind you that not once did Trump tell Putin to stop? Today he blamed Ukraine for being bombed by Russia. Can anyone get their head around this? So this is what he said.
The bombers inside Russia, did that change your view at all?
So did Operation Spiderweb change your view at all?
The cards he has.
Well, they gave Putin a reason to go in and bomb the hell out of him last night. That's something I didn't like about it. When I saw it, I said, here we go. Now it's going to be a strike.
So it's like, here we go. Now it's going to be big. There you go. You've given Russia permission to go and do that. God, you silly boys. These kids in the park, as he analogized the other day. So I don't think he's helping us toward any other conclusion than he's on the side of Putin, Trump. So there you go. All sorts of horrific images coming out of Kharkiv. Just a lot of activity. Here we have some other incredible footage. This is, you know, as Victoria says, how can someone justify this horror? No military targets, almost the center of Kyiv. It's so crazy. Many people lost everything. 3 people died in Kyiv. 3 people died in other cities. That's in Kharkiv, not in Kyiv. About 6 dozen injured. No words. Just, yeah. That is, oh no, sorry. This is Kyiv 2 nights ago. Sorry, yeah, my bad. So this is from Kyiv, but this is an image that I didn't show you last night. It hadn't come out, yesterday. So this is from Kyiv, not from Kharkiv, at least as far as I understand it. Now, Richard Woodruff, who is in Ukraine, said, I'm just so effing angry at the world right now. Kharkiv, home to over 1.5 million Ukrainians, is being turned to rubble. And the effing United States president official response is, well, you gave him reason to strike you. No, we didn't, Donald Trump, F you. So there's real anger with people inside Ukraine at Trump's sort of claims, at what he says on Air Force One and whatnot. So this isn't just kind of me finding an excuse to have a go at Donald Trump. Donald Trump is saying things that are really, really not helpful, and people in Ukraine are really angry with what he's saying because he does appear to be justifying this kind of activity from Russia. President Trump, with the strikes on Russian strategic aviation in Ukraine, they gave Putin a reason to go in and bomb the hell out of them last night. That's what I didn't like about it. When I saw it, I said, here we go. Anton Keroshenko says Russia didn't need and never needed a reason to strike Ukraine. They've been doing that for 3 years, mate. Now, on the other hand, Ukraine has also sent drones in, and they sent drones in yesterday daytime as well, which is worth noting. At this moment, said Vizina last night, so this was yesterday evening, so about 8 o'clock Ukrainian time. Ukrainian kamikaze drones are attacking the regions of Moscow, Oryol, Ryazan, Tula and Kursk. In Moscow, Domodedovo and Zhukovsky airports were suspended. They suspended arrivals and departures. And then, sorry, that should have been earlier. In fact, that's in the wrong place, talking about Ukraine, because Ukraine's attacks on Russia. We'll get there in a second. I just had that one thing in the wrong place. Yeah. So otherwise, we're on track. So I just wanted to show you this image of Kiev as well. So that was from 2 nights ago. This wasn't from last night, but it's a video I hadn't seen. So this came out a bit later. But this was Kiev again. You know, looks fairly central Kiev. I'm not 100% sure about that, but these look very much like commercial civilian areas, and that is what's going on a nightly basis, but particularly at the moment. Anton Gerashenko says one of the Russian strikes on Kiev the other night, Ukraine's lived through that, and then very next morning we go to work, kids go to school, life goes on. We cannot let Russia win. Our resilience never ceases to amaze me, honestly. But it's like, meanwhile, you know, Trump stands in an airplane, goes, well, I told you you're going to do that. That's what's going to happen if you defend yourselves. You shouldn't defend yourselves. You should just capitulate, give up. That's what we advise. Just give up to Russia, let them have everything. So to which 2 nights ago, so this wasn't as a result of last night's attacks on Kharkiv, but from 2 nights ago on Lutsk and Kiev. Zelensky said Russia even burned down another warehouse with humanitarian aid. They are waging war against cities and against life itself. You can't really argue with that. So then on to Ukrainian attacks into Russia. All of those places were targeted last night. Engels, there was a new fire, according to Max 25 here, but I don't know much about that. What I do know is that yesterday daytime, Engels the oil depot there was burning bigly. Things are not going well at Russia's Engels 2 airbase, or at least the oil depot nearby there, which was raging. I think they've got some of it under control now, by the looks of it. At least one fuel tank at the Kristall oil depot in Engels is still burning after yesterday's drone strike. So yeah, I don't know if those are the same ones, but just from a different angle, because actually those look like 2 different areas, and it could be that this one is much further back than the one there, or it could be that they've got some of the fire under control. Not really sure. It certainly doesn't look as raging as that, but it's difficult to know for sure. Now, Russia said it intercepted 82 drones in 7 different regions between 2:30 p.m. and midnight Moscow time. So in other words, during the daytime yesterday and into the evening, a lot of drones were sent by the Ukrainians into Russian airspace. So meanwhile, 2 of Moscow's airports have been shut down, as we heard just before. Kaluga airport is also now unable to allow landings and takeoffs as the threat of drones spreads. Fires in Kursk during an ongoing attack by Ukrainian drones. Governor of the Russian region, Kinstein, says that the problems were due to falling drone wreckage. Agricultural firm Gribnaya Raduga suffered damage, while in Shishigrov, dry grass was set alight, so wildfires can happen from these. So lots of activity inside Russia as well as inside Ukraine. And here was Drone Bomber's map at 1:05 in the afternoon yesterday. So that was what was happening yesterday afternoon. A huge Ukrainian drone attack into Kursk and Oryol region, and possibly Bryansk as well, a little bit into Belgorod, and also I presume those purple ones are USVs going towards Novorossiysk there. So a lot of activity yesterday, as well as one presumes last night in Valuki. So this is where I talked about that that mobile phone mast. Drones reportedly struck an electrical substation and a mobile communication tower. So that was that might well be the substation there. Overnight, Ukrainian drones attacked Smolensk. Explosions were heard and smoke has risen from a certain area, but don't know what the target was. Still waiting kind of any decent battle damage assessment from last night and the day before, to be perfectly honest. But that seems to be par for the course at the moment. Now, today, this morning, a Ukrainian kamikaze drone attack is underway in Moscow. Several explosions have been reported on the outskirts of the city, and that was reported just 2 or 3 hours ago, UK time. So that was 9:07 a.m. UK time, which would have been, is Moscow 2 hours ahead as well? So it could be sort of 11 o'clock in the morning Moscow time. So a lot of attention being given to Russia in the last 24 hours, but we just know very little about what's taken place. Okay, on to other bits and pieces. Now, Ukraine considered an operation to attack Russian troops in Transnistria. So that's the annexed area to the east of Moldova. Ukraine considered an operation to attack there because actually there's only 1,500 Russian troops there, and they have one of the biggest, essentially, ammunition and equipment stores that Ukraine would love to get their hands on and Russia would love to use, but it's kind of stuck there because they can't really access it. Now, Ukraine considered an operation to attack the Russian troops there, but decided not to open a new front yet, according to the Washington Post. In fact, the Washington Post basically has released an article. Some people are being a bit critical because they're saying, stop telling the Russians everything. Ukraine's dirty war is just getting started. Some people attacking the fact that it's calling it a dirty war, where rather than like a justified war using, a variety of different tactics, as if, Operation Spiderweb is a dirty war somehow. Everything is just beginning. Ukraine is preparing new, powerful and large-scale operations like Spiderweb, according to the Washington Post, citing intelligence sources. And I don't know if I've got it here. Yes, so Ukraine is preparing an operation to attack ships of Russia and its allies in the North Pacific Ocean. Now, again, this is the sort of thing that you'd be like, well, I suppose if the Washington Post know, the FSB probably know, but the possibility of sending naval drones hidden in cargo containers to certain locations is allegedly being considered, but this operation has not yet begun. So lots of options for the Ukrainians. Could we see other incredible missions be carried out? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Russia admits its rail network has been subject to a massive cyber attack. Kremlin says a DDoS attack, so where they overwhelm websites on Russian railways, came from users in Indonesia, USA, Colombia, China and Brazil. A statement says the attack is still ongoing, but its power and speed have decreased. Car bomb suspected in Moscow yesterday, resembling a homemade explosives. Tim White here saying it does look like, he says, oh, this gets interesting. Moscow police show another suspected explosive device under a different vehicle just 500 meters away from the Kia, but this time it's a BMW. But I'm instantly thinking false flag to prove how bad Ukrainians are and how great Russian police are. We're going to concentrate on that at the very end of this video, because there's a hilarious Russian video out. Long queues have formed at the Chonhar checkpoint between occupied Crimea and Kherson. This is one of the few places where you can get onto the Crimean Peninsula, and there are massive tailbacks of these Russian trucks here as the authorities are checking them, undergoing thorough inspections, because obviously you'd be thinking, justifiably so, that Crimea could well be an easy target for the Russians, for the Ukrainians to release drones in the same way that they did in Operation Spiderweb. Now, just to go abroad for a second here, PMC Wagner has announced the completion of its mission in Mali. Now, this is fascinating because only yesterday we were hearing that, the Malians have been hammered and, Russians had taken a bit of a hit there, and that the Ukrainians were active in Mali like they had been in Sudan. I reported that in yesterday's video. And then the day later, PMC Wagner announces that it's off-ski and that they have completed their mission there. Prune60 says, I seem to recall seeing some Ukrainian flags showing up there. Yeah, Tuareg rebels being helped by the Ukrainians and whatnot. So Wagner PMC has announced that it's completed its main mission in Mali and is leaving the country. The statement was published by a Telegram channel close to the mercenaries called Wagner's unloading. The Post claims that for 3.5 years, the mercenaries fought shoulder to shoulder with the people of Mali against terrorism. Quote, we eliminated thousands of militants and their commanders who have been terrorizing the civilian population for years. We helped local patriots build a strong and disciplined army capable of defending its land, and we accomplished the main task. All regional capitals have returned under the control of the legitimate government. The mission is complete. Wagner PMC is returning home, the Post reads. I wonder what that is really reflecting, and whether the Ukrainians have successfully undermined operations there, or whether the Russians really have done what they intended to do. Now, the Russian central bank has been bullied into lowering the interest rate, but not enough to lower it significantly, says Jakub Jankowski. There's been a lot of talk about what the Russian central bank was going to do. Were they going to keep the rates the same, lower them by this much, lower them by that much? I think they've lowered them by, is it a percentage point? Russia cuts key interest rate for the first time since 2022. The decision reflects, said the Kyiv Independent, a decrease in inflation. And so as inflation decreases, it could be a reflection of a lack of economic activity, which means, things aren't looking towards growth and whatnot. So inflation, as bad as it is often a sign of growth, where you get sort of wage inflation spiral. And you've got a very heated economy, so you try and put up interest rates to stop people borrowing. Essentially, it becomes prohibitive to borrow, because borrowing is one way of getting money to spank it on whatever, which then heats up the economy more. So you're trying to cool down the economy by getting people to save money rather than spend it. But as inflation is coming down, they argue here, they are bringing down inflation rates to try and get people to become more economically active. The decision reflects a decrease in inflation and mounting political pressure to ease borrowing costs amid Russia's economic slowdown. Okay, we're going to add to that this. So more bad news for the core of Russia's economy, as a fourth largest oil company in Russia reports heavy losses. More catastrophic data from Russian oil companies, says Spravdy today, as the entire sector has gone negative for Q1 2025. Results for the largest Russian oil companies' activities for Q1, a loss of $4 billion against $4 billion profit a year earlier. This was all before the fall of the oil price. So actually now it's going to get even worse. So Q1 was bad. It's lost money. The Russian oil sector has lost money. And then Q2 is going to be, as it says here, it seems Q2 2025 will be awesome. Sanctions work. And we can add to that this. Russian oil exports fell 29% in the final week of May. I did say this yesterday, plunging from 495,000 to 352,000 tonnes a day. Sharpest weekly drop since the full-scale invasion began. EU sanctions are biting hard, disrupting loadings, payments and insurance. A port breakdown, and you can see a port breakdown of how, what they're doing. New EU sanctions are blocking Western tankers, financing and insurers. So the 17th round of EU sanctions are biting. Some ships refuse to load. Others sit idle over flawed paperwork. This is not a technical delay. It's enforcement. Russia is now relying on a shrinking shadow fleet. Fewer ports are willing to take unclear or disguised cargo. The Kremlin's export network is breaking down under pressure. Oil is one of the Kremlin's last reliable funding sources. Each lost shipment cuts revenue and expenses, exposes how fragile this system has become. Congress supports tighter US sanctions, the Lindsey Graham sanctions proposition, but the White House hasn't moved yet. In fact, there are claims that Trump is trying to water down that bill. This delay gives Moscow space to adapt and undermines the EU's pressure. Europe is applying real pressure, but without US action, the full sanctions front remains incomplete and Russia will exploit every gap. So interesting stuff there coming from the Kyiv Insider. Now, War Translator says Russian Zeb bloggers are claiming that Rosgvardia thwarted an FPV drone diversion near a military site, bizarrely labeling it a terrorist act, even though it's a legitimate wartime target. But it's let's be real, the way the video staged screams another obvious setup. This is what I was referencing earlier. It's a hilarious video in my opinion. This is after Operation Spiderweb, right? So that very involved way that the Ukrainians got drones to 4 different air bases and then attacked those planes with those drones that were repeating off telecoms towers and whatnot. Well, because that's how they do things, it is obvious that a few days later you're going to have one random bloke hanging around at a Russian airbase or something with a single drone and then getting caught by the Russians. This is such a bad video. It's hilarious. So you can watch this. Oh, look. Oh, there he is. Oh, right. Okay, guy hiding in the grass. Ukrainian, just with a poncho on, just fiddling around with a drone here. Oh, look. I'm just getting my drone ready, just putting the final sticker on it. Oh, what do I hear? I hear something. Do I hear someone behind me? Oh, no, just looking at the last little bit here. I've got to press a button here. I've just got to, yeah, no. Oh, no, I've been found. Quick, run. Quick, run. Run, run, run. And then it cuts to, oh, look, we found this gun. And look what else we found. A drone in the grass. And look, another drone in the grass. And look, a backpack. And look, a bomb. And there you have it. Amazing. So that's what the Ukrainians are really planning. Not like, incredibly complex operations involving trucks with solar panels on top and so on and so forth. No, this is just really poor, typical Russian PR. We're going back to, you need to get us 3 Sims, and then they get Sims computer games and then plant them with like Nazi paraphernalia in a flat and say, look what we found. Sims games, you've read that wrong, haven't you? Just hilarious. Anyway, and the whole Elon Musk, Donald Trump fracas that's still kind of rumbling on in all these different directions. Dmitry Medvedev, this is how embarrassing it is for the United States. It is just tremendously embarrassing. You've got the Russians just loving it. We are ready to facilitate the conclusion of a peace deal between Donald and Elon for a reasonable fee and to accept Starlink shares as payment. Don't fight, guys. Elon Musk, laughy emoji to that. Haha, Dmitry Medvedev. That's so funny. Rather than going, oh my God, this is embarrassing, the Russians are capitalizing on our stupidity. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thanks, guys. Take care. I'll speak soon. It was shorter than yesterday, and we will get shorter, but it does require these guys to stop doing so much. Absolutely crazy times. I've got to spare a really long and ponderous thought for the Ukrainians caught in Kharkiv, where it looks pretty horrific there. So all the best to them. You guys take care, and I'll speak to you soon.